So would it be silly if, let's say, you have a homework assignment, and you do your homework assignment, and you bring it in, and you're like, teacher, I have gone beyond the call of duty. I have done my homework. Here it is. Would your teacher be like, good. You did what you're supposed to do. And that's what's being said here. It's like, we're supposed to not think of the things that we're supposed to do as sort of extraordinary feats of courage and daring and things like that. It's like, we're unprofitable servants. We did what we were supposed to do. And so as Christians, we are called to live a certain way. And our actions speak louder than our words. Have you ever heard that before? Actions speak louder than words. That's what St. Paul is saying to this other saint, St. Titus, who he became a bishop. He was a leader of a church. He was actually in the island of Crete. I don't know if you've ever heard of that place before, but if you look at like Greek literature and myths and things like that, that's where the famous Minotaur in the Labyrinth was actually on the island of Crete. Now, he wasn't in charge of the Minotaur, that was just a story. But the people there started to have trouble with being able to, with their actions, say that they were Christians. And this was especially some of the leaders who were here, and some of those who either were older, more respected, and they started to do something that was different than what they were saying with their mouths. And so St. Paul is speaking about this, and it's really important for us to look at these three words that help us understand how we're supposed to live. So later on in here it says, the grace of God appeared, it saved us, and it's training us to reject godless ways and worldly desires. So in other words, following a way that doesn't lead to God. We can maybe think of some of those in our own mind, that, you know, it's going down the dark path, or worldly desires, things that we're excited about but really aren't really what life is all about. Like if we lived for pizza. Has anyone ever thought they lived for pizza? I mean, sometimes, you know, sometimes I really, really love pizza, and so all I'm thinking about the whole day is pizza. But if that's what I'm living my life for, when I finally meet the Lord in heaven, and Jesus says, what did you live for? And I go, pizza. He'd be like, that's nice, but that isn't really what life was about. There's so much more to life than pizza. So we can think of, that's sort of a silly version, but there are other desires within our heart that are worldly. They're things that we sort of hold on to things in this life, and we're not really spending time on the most important things. So this grace of God, this is the grace that you received in your baptism. And it's come to give you training in how to reject these things that are not going to satisfy. And so these are the three things that we need to do. It says, this is how you need to live. Temperately, justly, and devoutly. So what are they? Justly, temperately, and devoutly. That's right. So let's think about those. What do those mean? So temperately means when something is tempered, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to have a big temper. You're not supposed to go around with a big temper, but have you ever seen or heard the word like tempered steel? So it's something that gets purified of all the things that really get in the way of freedom. And remember, freedom is following God. That's deeper than a freedom to do whatever I want. Because I have the freedom to eat this camera right here on this iPad. It's kind of scary, right? But I could be like Cookie Monster, like one of those puppet guys that just sort of and just eat the whole thing. But I have the freedom to do that. I have teeth, I have hands, I have a mouth. I could crunch that thing, but is that going to lead to true freedom? No, I'm going to get sick. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. I'm going to have some sort of weird electronic gadget in my stomach. And that's not going to be good for me. So do you see how freedom is always freedom to do the right thing? Not merely just freedom to do whatever I want. Sometimes we think freedom is that, especially within our country. It's like, well, I can do whatever I want, and no one can tell me otherwise. I don't have to listen to my parents. I don't have to listen to my teachers. I could do no homework. And yet, yeah, you have the freedom to do that. You have the freedom to even eat your homework, or to feed it to your dog. But that's not going to make you excel, right? You're not going to be happy. Because there are consequences to go up to your teacher and say, "Teacher, I refuse to do my homework. I stand in my right of freedom." And your teacher will be like, "Okay, but you're going to fail the class if you do that." Do you see how freedom is doing the right thing? That's what leads to freedom. So temperately, there are things in our heart and things, these different voices in the world that say, this is what will bring you happiness. This is what will bring you happiness. And they're things that sort of pull us off course. Temperately means to not go this way or this way, but to always have moderation. So if we think of food, it means that we don't just like not eat, but also we don't just eat everything. When you are eating everything, then you become a slave to food. If you're always eating chocolate, when you see chocolate on the other side of the table, what happens? You start not thinking about anything else but chocolate, and you're like, my precious, I have to have it. You're a slave to that chocolate. The chocolate is saying, eat me, eat me. And you're like, I can't help myself. I must eat this chocolate or I will die. Right? Have you ever had that before? Where it's like, I have to eat this. And then when maybe your mom and dad or your teacher says, wait, then what happens? You turn into a monster, right? You're just like, no, give me my chocolate. And you push anything and anyone out of your way in order to have that chocolate. Are you free? No, you're a slave. You're a slave because there's something that's connected to that thing that is pulling you, where you don't have the freedom to say, okay, later. Or, okay, I don't need to do that. Video games is a great one too. You know, I always talk about video games. I love video games. But remember what Blessed Carlos said. He realized how he was becoming a slave to video games with his PlayStation. So he said, you know what? I'm only going to take 1 hour a week to play Super Mario Kart or whatever. Are you a slave to your video games? And a great way of discerning that is try to just say, you know what, this week, I'm only going to just play 1 hour for the entire week. Can you do it? And can you do it with a freedom and a cheerful heart, or are you always thinking about it? Or when your mom and dad say, it's time to put it away and do your homework, what happens in your heart? Do you feel stuck? Do you feel like, I have to do this, or I won't be happy, or I won't be able to really live? And it's like, Mario can wait. Mario is fun, but don't make yourself a slave of video games. So that's what temperately means, is all of us have some sort of thing that we're connected to that we like, and yet we have to be able to have that freedom to say, not now. That gives us the freedom then to be able to say yes to God when He calls. Justly. The word just means to honor the relationship. So if you are just with your friends, then you treat them with respect. You don't talk behind their back. You practice kindness. when they're going maybe the wrong way. To be a just person is to say, hey, I love you too much to let you go this way. To be a just person in society is to say, I'm going to love my neighbor as myself. And then devoutly. Devoutly means, just like with temperately, we can't sort of go all in with like food or video games or whatever, but there is someone that we can go all in with, and that's God. Devoutly means, from my heart, I love God. And I can only love God from my heart if I'm free from being a slave to the other things. And if I'm truly loving my neighbor as myself. Because I can't say, I love God. This is what St. John would say. I can't love God and say that I love God and then hate my brother. I mean, wouldn't that be weird? Here you are praying, Lord, I love you. Lord, I need you. Lord, you're awesome. And then you turn to the person right next to you and be like, and I hate you. Like, what's up with that? Wouldn't that be weird? And then you go back and be like, yes, Lord, I love you, but I hate you. That's what the Pharisee did, right? Who here wants to be a Pharisee? Remember the tax collector, the poor guy who, yes, he was doing the wrong thing, but remember the Pharisee? He gets up and he says, Lord, I am amazing. I'm better than anyone. And in fact, I'm so much better than this little guy right over here that's horrible. Do you see how that's a very weird prayer? So, to be devout, to love God from our heart, means that we need to be able to love our neighbor and to be free of those things that make us slaves in this world. And the grace of God's been given you to love exactly like that. So what are those three things again? Justly, devoutly, and temperately. That's right. Remember those, memorize those, and think about, how am I doing in being temperate? How am I doing being just? How am I doing being devout? And that's the recipe for being a saint.